Yeah, so I was trying to tell you about um, how Bentham borrows from um, Hobbes uh, because the Humean critique, I hope you remember that David Hume's critique was directed at classical liberalism in general and at John Locke in particular. And what we actually find is that Hume was basically arguing against the whole idea that rights are given by nature, and especially the right to property. And he was also someone arguing against the idea that what should I say? He was also arguing against this particular thing, that right to property is a natural thing, and that it is not a social thing. How did that happen now? Sorry, I got distracted by the phone. So Hume said that how do we know that nature has given us these rights? My God. How do we want to switch off the phone? Sorry. Yeah. Bentham renamed the tribes. No, I'm sorry. I'm totally lost. Please give me a minute to recollect myself. It's been an extremely unpleasant day. So, an unpleasant day in combination with this back pain is somehow not letting me teach properly. Yeah, so Hume had questioned Locke, and he had said, how do we know that nature has given us these rights? Through what agency did nature let people know that you have these rights? And how did right to property come through in the list of uh, the natural rights? Yeah, that is what those were the questions asked by uh, Hume of John Locke and classical liberalism. And since there was no satisfactory reply from any of the classical liberals, John Locke was long dead, since there was no reply by the classical liberals, we see that Jeremy Bentham and James Mill, these were people who decided to ground rights and laws in something tangible and not in something intangible like the natural rights. So what Bentham did is he went back to Hobbes. Hobbes had talked about fundamentality of human nature, which I told you, basically this expression means that human nature is the same in all people at all times, at all places, and that it does not change. Okay, that is the fundamentality of human nature argument, and that has been something that Bentham, Hobbes believed in. And if you look at Bentham, he borrowed that particular idea, changed the drives from aversion and appetite and renamed them the drives to pleasure and pain. So he believed that all human beings would be pleasure seekers and that all people would basically avoid pain. So, since pleasure is tangible, it's not something abstract. It is tangible. You can feel pleasure. So, on the basis of that, uh, he came up with the argument that since everybody experiences and desires pleasure, uh, pleasure is that principle that should be the basis of all legislation. Now, if you say pleasure, it sounds like it's monolithic. It sounds like it is monolithic, but pleasure is not a singularity. It's a multiplicity, meaning there are different pleasures, different kinds of pleasures. And so the question in front of Bentham is, which pleasure are we talking about? That is a basic thing that we need to understand. Okay, because one person might derive different pleasures. Somebody might derive pleasure out of sports, and even within the sports, people might be, what should I say, um, deriving pleasure out of watching sports, and some of them might be deriving pleasure out of playing sports or games. Okay, and even those who watch sports may not derive pleasure out of watching one particular sport or game. They might do so from watching different uh, games. Somebody might like watching cricket as well as football and maybe even tennis. Somebody might like watching all these games. So the question is, do they give them, do they give this person rather the same amount of pleasure? Does the person get the same amount of pleasure watching cricket and football or watching hockey and um, tennis? They may not. There may be people who, I mean, there may be this person who prefers watching cricket to watching football, prefers watching football to watching hockey, and prefers watching hockey to watching tennis. But if there is only tennis being shown on television, he'll be quite happy to watch it. So Bentham says so Bentham says there is a hierarchy of pleasures. One kind of pleasure might be more pleasurable to a person than other kinds of pleasure. Okay. So what does this mean? This means Sorry about that. Having a bad day. Having a few bad days for the past 2-3 days. Yeah. But as Roger Waters says, the show must go on. Let's see if it goes on or not. I'm totally out of my elements. I don't seem to speak clearly. I seem to be speaking very slowly. A friend of mine who attended the webinar in the morning, he said, "You looked very, very upset about something. And I've never heard you speak so slowly." I don't know. I don't know what was the speed at which I spoke. I don't have an original speed at which I speak and measure how much slower or faster I am. In fact, maybe I should take tomorrow off. I don't know. The physical pain is all right. One can tolerate it as long as it is in bearable limits. And even if it is not in bearable limits, you can still somehow tolerate it. But if you're mentally disturbed, it's impossible it's absolutely impossible to teach with any degree of efficiency. I myself can feel that I'm somewhere at the rock bottom today, right now. I am worse than what I was in that webinar in the morning. I don't know, sentences are not getting constructed in my head, but we'll take on the slogan of the bison unit of the Indian Army. Its slogan is passion regardless. So passion regardless, and the show must go on. So let's keep it going. Yeah, now the first is at the level of the individual, because like I said, every individual experiences different kind of pleasures. I had given you one example, and that came from sports. Um, it's actually games. Sports and games are two different things. Athletics, gymnastics, these are the kind of things which fall under the category of sports. The others like cricket, uh, then hockey or football, tennis, all of them fall under the category of games. Um, so that is the difference between sports and games. And as usual, there'll be something which will disrupt this understanding. And that is for a person like me who loves watching motorcycle racing and Formula One car racing. That is called a sport. So it's not called a game. It's called a sport. Wonder why. Anyway, so everything is not so peacefully divided. everything always has some exception, which is an inconvenience. I made this point because when we proceed, we will be seeing that there are many such inconveniences that keep cropping up. So the different kind of pleasures, the first is at the level of the individual, because every individual experiences different kinds of pleasures. Uh, and these could, these will be related to, uh, this will be related to uh, the uh, fact that that an individual is capable of doing many things that give him uh, pleasure of different intensities and even different kinds. So, yeah, somebody might like watching sports and games, but that is not the only thing he likes or she likes. That person might also like watching movies, films. So that becomes another, what should I say? It becomes another dimension, because sports and games can be clubbed together in one dimension, as one dimension, and watching movies can be another dimension, the second dimension. Somebody might like watching uh, comedy films. They might like watching Hindi comedy films. I don't know if they make comedy films in Hindi. It's been ages since I watched a Hindi film. The same person might derive pleasure out of watching Telugu comedy films. Again, I have my doubts if comedy films are now being made in Telugu, because most of the comedians have unfortunately passed away. So I really don't know if I don't watch Telugu films now either. So you are looking at a second dimension. If one is sports and games, the second is films. You can include Hollywood films in it. Now, you can say that even in films, somebody might prefer watching comedy films, but might actually enjoy uh, watching uh, other kinds of films. Uh, by other kinds of films, I mean adventure. Somebody might like watching films like Mission Impossible. Somebody might like watching sci-fi with films like The Matrix, all the matrices, since there are some 3 or 4 films. So somebody might like watching those also, but might have preferences again among these. Somebody might like another kind of an activity apart from watching sports and games and watching films. And that is taking part. Okay, that could be taking part in competitions such as quiz. Now, don't be shocked that I mentioned this. Quiz is in itself an activity where even people who are more than 50 and 60 years old still take part in quiz competitions. They don't take part in quiz competitions meant for students who are going to college. There are quiz clubs across the country, and these quiz clubs conduct competitions at various levels, at the local level, very local level. The next level can be a regional level, and over and above that, you could have the national level. And there are international quizzes as well. You can see that in quizzes like the BBC Mastermind. So it's an international thing. And there are people who are quite old taking part in that and doing rather well. They are in no way handicapped, or no way do they feel handicapped compared to younger people. See, one of the advantages of mentally, activities that are related to the mind is that you can grow better as you grow older. Please keep this in mind. I'm not saying wiser. Okay, you don't necessarily get wiser. We think we are getting wiser, but we are actually in many instances only getting old. Very few people have wisdom. Okay, and but there are certain kinds of sport where the older you are, the better you do. One of them is not sport, game. One of them is chess. I know that a number of youngsters become grandmasters and international masters, but even the old people are pretty good at chess. And bridge is another game in which definitely the older people do better than the younger ones. See, it has been established scientifically that your body starts aging at around 45, and it's aging throughout anyway. But the aging process is something that gets an impetus at around 45. And by the time you're 50, 55, you're no longer in your prime. You're no longer in your prime. You might still be able to go for a jog, but you cannot run the same distances that you used to run. The speed at which you jog also comes down. So as far as the body is concerned, aging is a source of is a problem. But with the mind, it's the other way around. You start peaking around the age of 60, and you're in your prime around 70. You're in your prime around the age of 70, and you can also continue to be mentally active and doing well in different areas of mental activity, even around at the time when you're around 80. One profession that comes to mind, not in the case of India, in the case of foreign countries, especially the Western ones, like the United States of America and the United Kingdom, Germany. Here you find people actively teaching and researching even at the age of 80. That is because they do not have an age limit for superannuation. Superannuation is there only for some professions. It is not there for all professions. In countries like the United Kingdom and Germany, But if you look at the United States of America, there is no concept of superannuation. If you are a judge, uh, you can be a judge till you die. You don't have a term. You don't have a term. You can be a judge till you die. And most of the judges in America are in the age group of 75 and above. Okay, so mentally, if the mind is also something that needs to be exercised, just like you need to uh, exercise your body to stay fit, the mind also needs to be exercised to stay fit. So my mother, for example, she remembers, I think, about 10 or 15 cell phone numbers, these 10-digit numbers. She remembers about 10 or 15 easily, maybe more. That's because she has been making a habit of remembering telephone numbers, and she does this Sudoku. Uh, she's an expert in that. She's been trying to get me to do Sudoku. I said, no, that's not my cup of tea. So you have to exercise the mind. It doesn't only have to be doing Sudoku or doing crossword puzzles. If you're reading and if you're reflecting on what you read, you have to read complex stuff. Anyone can read a novel and throw it away. But if you are reading things which are in the nature of academic books or in the nature of philosophical tracts, and if you consider the arguments made by the writers, and you consider the pros and cons of that, then you are you're mentally fit. And if you take some musicians, I'm not talking about Indian musicians. Indian musicians have a very small shelf life. But if you take Western bands like the Rolling Stones, Jethro Tull, especially Jethro Tull, amazing band. And they are into their 70s. They are into their 70s and they're still playing music live, not just studio recordings. And Roger Waters, whom I keep quoting, is still so creative that you should see some of his shows. They're not filmed properly because people are doing it with camera phones, I mean, phone cameras. Actually, I think they should be called camera phones, but we call them phone cameras. And not only is he creating mind-boggling sets, and that set, mind you, is not there when you enter into the auditorium, or if they enter into an open ground. They're not there. They keep emerging. These different sets keep emerging as the show progresses, and they are related to the set of songs that the band is playing. Now, he conceptualizes the shows. He's about 77, I think, now, or 76, I don't know. And he's active on stage. He actually runs on stage at this age. And he tours and plays every night when he's touring the United States of America. He plays every night. So that itself requires fantastic energy. So mentally, he's probably better than what he was in the past. So you can see that, you know, there are different things that people can do, and people enjoy doing some things over other things. I made this rather long point to establish that there are pleasures derived out of passive activity. Passive, not how can you have passive activity? Out of passiveness, and also out of activeness. So I remember my own days uh, in a rock band, and performing rock music gave me a thrill that is completely unparalleled. It's unparalleled when you're there in front of a huge audience, and when you start a song or a show, you say 1, 2, 3, 4. The moment you say 4, the entire band gets going. The entire band gets going, and that is really, really thrilling. And I was the front man of the band, so I interacted with the audience, and it was great fun. It was great fun. And if I could do it now, I would still do it. I'd do it again. And when I say if I could do it now, age is not the constraint. There are other constraints. It is not even my ill health. It is the fact that putting together a band is a problem. Most of the people who are in my band have left the city, and therefore, again, to find musicians and to start practicing somewhere, there's no place where we can practice now. And so it's an uphill thing, so I'm not doing it. So there are some pleasures that are derived out of passiveness or passivity, which is watching television, different kinds of programs, whatever you like, where you're not doing anything, but you're sitting back and watching things. I'm digressing only for a minute. There are a couple of books. One which is called Amusing Ourselves to Death by a professor of sociology in America. His name is Neil Postman. He wrote a book where he talks about how people want to be entertained all the time. And entertainment also should not be serious. It should be frivolous, fun, that which doesn't challenge your brain. That's why he said amusing ourselves to death. Waters, I don't know how, he picked this book up and made an album called Amused to Death, one of his finest works. It's a fantastic take on TV, reality shows, all these kind of things. So, Amused to Death is probably one of the greatest works that I have heard. So this is one dimension. The other book I am unable, it's not a book, it's an essay that came in a compendium of essays. I am unable to remember the author. It's a lady, and she made a brilliant point. She said, if you look at entertaining or entertainment till the modern period, all entertainment was where people participated in some way or the other in the process of entertainment. Okay, if you wanted entertainment, you had to entertain yourself by being a part of it. But in the modern period, increasingly, the separation between the entertainer and the person who is getting entertained the separation started increasing, and it has finally reached a point where entertainers are different and entertainees are completely different. So I have two sets of people now. Previously, it was only one set of people entertaining themselves through participation in the entertainment. Now it has changed. So I think it's a brilliant point. We sit back and say, I want to be entertained. So if you look at all these things are telling you so the way we want to enjoy pleasures have gone through many twists and turns, civilizationally, individually. Even individually, there was a time, if there was a cricket match in the Lal Bahadur Stadium, I would be first in line to buy tickets. These days, I don't watch cricket so ardently. I do watch cricket, but somehow this IPL kind of thing has, made it not a sport anymore. Okay. Or not a game anymore. But otherwise, I used to be the first in line to buy tickets. These are not test matches. These were Duleep Trophy matches, South Zone versus West Zone, or Ranji Trophy matches. So we used to go and stand there in lines. Every Sunday, I think it is still there, for about 5 months or 6 months, funnily starting in the rainy season in June. Used to have the local league cricket. So local league cricket was, you have A League, B League, C League. So there was a team of people one of whom is my ophthalmologist, who was a very good cricketer. People much older than us. And the AV College grounds, which are pretty close to where I am, this is where they used to play. So we went and watched those Sunday league matches as well. It was not international cricket. If I may borrow a slogan that KTR has made it his own, it's not his slogan. Gully, he said, gully elections. We used to go and watch gully cricket. We played gully cricket, watched gully cricket. But I don't watch cricket now as much as I used to. Right now, I'm going through the football phase. Motorsport will be top. That's a different thing. So what I'm trying to tell you is, much as the fundamentality of nature argument tells you that there are pleasures that you seek and pains that you avoid, and that Bentham believes that pleasures should be the basis of legislation. The problem that comes here is the fact that pleasures, forget the pains, they are not there anyway. And unless you have a sadomasochistic personality, you will not derive pleasure out of pain. Though there are arguments even for that, but I'll talk about that later. So quantification of pleasures is an exercise completely riddled with difficulties. What I liked 10 years ago, I don't like today. It's not like if I like pleasures of one kind, they remain unchanged. They don't. So pleasures are transient. So please consider the question: can you really consider something transient? Transient is changing, temporary, passing through. So can you make that the basis of legislation? That is the simplest question. There are some more questions which are far, far more difficult than these questions. We'll explore them tomorrow. And I'm really sorry. It's a very, very patchy class. I think I picked up speed a little towards the end, but that's too little. But this was not a class that should be called a class. I was slow. I was tentative. I couldn't construct sentences. All things that come with being mentally very, very disturbed. Now don't ask me what disturbed me. Just let me tell you, Osmania University did. As I'm growing older, my ability to deal with these seems to be going down. So thank you for putting up with me. Hopefully, I'll be better tomorrow. Ideally, I should take a day off, but my only problem is that now that we are going into physical classes from 1st of September, if for whatever reason I am unable to make it to college, my back is no better than what it was. And then I might need the leaves. So I am putting them in a bank, saving them for another day. So I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much. And have a good evening and a good night. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Take care.
Thank you,
Take
sir.
care, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.